Today's episode, we're talking about sex.
Wow. Welcome back to Raising Ohana. I'm Rachel.
And I am Jace. All right.
It always feels a little
episode.
silly to introduce ourselves with our professional voices.
Today's episode, we're talking about sex
Wow.
and how to talk about it with your children. Just kidding. Let's use our normal voices. Okay, so
We are not kidding. That's actually what
This
we're going to
is-
be talking about today. A little bit about sex, pornography, and one of our favorite topics of all time, the safety couch.
Gosh, where do we start? So this is the number 2. We're not going to talk about number 1 because it's a bit more awkward than this. So number 2 is how to talk to your children about this. And what prompted this in our marriage was that, at a young age, Rach had the talk, and it was a great experience for her. At a very young age, I experienced why I should have had the talk, but did not. At a very young age, and kind of the consequences that went with that. So I don't know where to start with this because it could get awkward and I say too much.
It's going to always get awkward.
Okay.
And that's why you guys like to hang out with us, because we're awkward and weird. So this is something that I feel...
Wait. Which is awkward and which is weird?
I'm weird?
And I'm
you're
awkward?
I don't know. Okay. But we were discussing a little bit earlier of how we are so different in parenting than our friends. And everyone's different. Everybody parents different because every family is different. But in comparison to some of our friends, we usually get marked as the strict parents.
Yes.
We might have stricter rules, but then sometimes not, which is interesting.
I think we have strict rules, but we do such crazy stuff that we don't seem strict because we are jumping off of bridges and we're hiking these crazy, right? Like we're not strict in those things. We're very open with adventure, but we're very strict about how we kind of regulate things and how we do things.
Yes. And I do think that in comparison to a lot of our friends or people we know, we might be considered more strict. But what's interesting is, like Jay said, in certain things we are not. And one of those things I feel like we are not is like we are really open with communication. And I know that when we first got married, we talked a lot about this and how important communication was to us, to each
literally
other.
Everything. Think of every bad rom-com you've seen
Oh
or
my gosh.
drama.
Somebody
The drama,
lies
a
or
drama is because
hides
somebody
the
won't tell the
truth.
truth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They hide something. Every Hallmark movie. I can't believe you're actually that guy, right? Like
Oh,
all the
totally.
time,
Which
all the
we're
time.
coming to Hallmark season and I love it. But
You're already in your blanket. You're ready
I
to go.
am. I'm ready to go watch my movies.
Short sleeve season for life.
But the communication is super important. And when we talked about parenting, we read tons of parenting books and what that looks like as we were having children, what we were wanting to do. We really wanted to focus on communication and some of the big topics in life that can be hard to navigate or harmful for children or families or whatever. We thought we need to really focus on how to communicate during those topics, which are things like sex, pornography, anything, abuse,
assault, so many
safety,
things.
like when kids are not feeling safe, anything like that, honestly revolve around a good relationship, communication, and having those direct, open communicating lines with your kids. So it's going to start with sex.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
What age did you get the talk at?
I got the talk at 8. So I was with my sister. We were coming home from the store. We lived in Hawaii. And we lived in the very center of the island called Wahiawa. And we were coming home from a store. We walked down the street. I looked down and I happened to see a used condom on the side of the road. And I was like, that's weird. So I comment that to my sister. I was like, what is that? She says, it's a condom. And in my head, I had heard of the word condominium before. And I was like, that doesn't fit right. I don't understand. And she laughed and she goes, ask mom when we get home, because she knew what was coming.
You were about to get
the talk. It's so true. I got home and I asked my mom, I said, I saw this thing on the road and it's like Nikki said, it's a condom. What does that mean? Da, 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 da. So she sits me down and she tells me what it is, all about sex, what a condom's used for, all the things. I think it was probably like it felt like hours. but it was probably like 30 minutes long. And she asked if I had questions. She used anatomically correct words, no nicknames for body parts or anything like that. And then I felt like I had this wealth of knowledge afterwards. I was
You
like,
did.
I am a big kid. And I went around telling my friends what sex was. I actually only had one really good friend, and I kind of told her. But yeah, so I got the talk at 8. And you know what that did though? It opened up the doors for me to be able to talk to my parents more often about any kind of questions I had. Because I felt like, oh, they trust me with this knowledge. Like, I'm a big kid now. I can go to them.
Wow. So I had a very, very different experience. Where to start? So 3rd grade. How old are you? How old are you traditionally in 3rd grade?
I think 8 or 9.
So it was before 3rd grade or beginning of 3rd grade. My family lived in, let's see, were we in Beverly Hills at this point? Outskirts of Beverly Hills, not the nice part of Beverly Hills. It's like the alley behind our house was Beverly Hills, but the front of the house was Los Angeles. Anyway, so we lived there, and I had a friend, and I was allowed to go to this friend's house. And the dad, one of these days that we were there, he was looking at this magazine, and there were really cute girls on it. I mean, it wasn't like arousing, it wasn't anything like that. And then he goes, "Oh, boys, come over here, come over here." He's like, "All right, here you go. Here's yours. Here's yours. Pick a girlfriend and tell me why." And it's a Playboy.
I cannot believe that you were given a Playboy at the age of 8.
Or earlier. It could have been 7,
That
8.
is so crazy.
And he had stacks of them. He had a full collection of one that I was like, for the longest time before I heard the name again, I thought it was just called Hustle. But it was Hustler, which is a really bad one.
I was like, I know that's not like.
Yeah. And so, but the Playboys, he'd show us and he'd ask us different times that I went there, which one was my girlfriend and why. And there was this one brunette, curly hair, and that's all I remember. Well, I remember a little bit more, but not the nudity parts of it. But, and so he's like, why? And I explained it all, but then that ingrained it in my brain. And
I cannot
then,
even imagine the psychological things that is doing to your brain. You know what I mean? Like, whoa.
Oh, I mean, think of it. Every time I hung out, he'd pull something like this out. And there was more, but I don't need to go into that. There was decades of therapy for this.
Oh my gosh.
That my parents later on in life, I went to therapy with my father for a long time. And I think what happened is I thought a lot of the things I had going on was because of my dad. But actually, it was because of the other people that did things, the other people that I was around living in Los Angeles, being a young kid. And before that, doing child modeling and other stuff like that. And having girls changing all around you and things like that. It normalized it for me without having that talk yet. So my foundation on nudity and the human body was, it's pretty, it's nice to look at. No barriers.
But also from outside sources, and outside
Yes.
sources as in not in the family.
Right. No, not safe sources by any means. I don't need to go into that in this episode, but, and so then fast forward a couple of years, my parents noticed what was happening to their children living in Los Angeles. And it's a great place. I'm sure it's all this, but in our family's specific situation, some pretty crazy stuff was going down. And so they moved us to Utah, and living in Utah for a bit, all of a sudden there's one day we have to build, and I still don't know what this is, but I remember the word, a diorama. Little Jace was like, a diarrhea. But I still don't actually know what a diorama is. Rach has educated me. It's definitely something she would know what it is and understand.
I love dioramas. They're so fun. I used to make like little haunted houses or Christmas houses that were dioramas. And
What
they're three
is a diorama? Real quick, because I'm
3D
sure there's other people.
version of a display, a 3D version. So whether
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh, the shoebox.
the solar system or a shoebox where you like show the depth of a haunted house, a bedroom.
Okay, so let's get back onto this.
Anyways.
then. Now I've been educated. Thank you. This podcast has been great for me.
Check.
So we had to do these, and they chucked us this big old Sears catalog, or it felt like it was this big. It might have been this, but to little Jace, it was like, wham. And so they gave us the Sears catalog. We're cutting stuff out, making little stand-up things to put in this shoebox. And my buddy's like, hey, Jace, look at this. And he shows me, and there's this lady in lingerie. I didn't know that. It's just see-through underwear. And I was like, oh, that's cute. Here, let's put that in my pocket. So I put it in my pocket and I went home. And my mom was doing laundry.
You put a picture of a girl in your pocket and you went home.
Yeah, because go back to the beginning of this, foundationally, I did not know that was bad yet.
That is so
I
crazy.
hadn't had that moment where it's like, hey, guess what? This is bad. You shouldn't do that. And so I had her in my pocket. That sounds weird. And
We should definitely not use that term. Had her in my
I
pocket.
had the image
Had the picture.
folded up in my pocket that was cut out for a diorama from a Sears catalog. And I go home, and all of a sudden my dad's like, hey, Jace, what's this? I'm like, oh, that's a lady.
You're so proud of yourself.
I didn't know it was wrong. I literally didn't know. And so I go, oh, that's a lady. And he's like, she's in her underwear. I'm like, yep. And I'm in trouble for something. I really,
And you know what? And it is
truly
sweet and
remember
innocent. And I don't think, like, honestly, probably a lot of the world's not going to think that this is bad, right? And where we're coming from, we're trying to keep the mind of children a little bit more innocent.
Yeah. So he gives me this great talk. I remembered it. He goes, Jace, the female body is beautiful. And I'm like, yes, it is. And it wasn't like a turn on. It was just like, agreed. Yeah, it is. It's nice to look at. I didn't know why it was nice to look at, but it was nice to look at. I was 8. At this time, probably 10. And so then he gives me a talk about how you're not supposed to look at a woman's body until you're married. And I still can remember that blowing my mind. And I can just imagine myself flashing back to all the time, like little child model, you know, girls are changing over here. You're changing at the back of the runway. Maybe you don't know, but as soon as you get back off that runway, you have a little rack of clothing and you're changing real quick. And so you can see people changing. And it's not a sexual thing, or at least not for little Jace, it wasn't. And so I thought through that, and I thought through this dad, and I thought through all the magazines I had looked at his house. And I just was like, wow, okay, I'm not supposed to anymore. That was really hard for me because it was already kind of programmed in, but I was like, okay, that's a thing. And then fast forward another 2 years, I'm in, I think it's 9th grade, 8th or 9th grade. And
Wait. You went from 8 years old.
8 years old was the first, 7, 8. Then it was 10. Now I'm like 12,
Oh, 12.
13.
Okay, got it.
And my dad, we lived on this golf course. Well, our house was here, and then there was a golf course right behind us. And so we'd call into the tee box or to the shop and be like, hey, is there anybody, are there any available tee times? Like, oh, man, not for a couple hours or not for an hour. We'd be like, oh, okay, sweet. We'd go out the back gate, throw a ball down, and have a great chat. And this one time I remember specifically, I'm going, hey, Jace, what do you and your friends talk about in the locker room? And I was like,
that's some big conversation.
yeah, I was like, part of me was like, well, I can't tell him what we talk about in the locker room because we had sexually active friends in junior high.
At 12?
In junior high. Now, no, they were grades older than us.
Okay.
But they were still our friends.
14?
Yes. And so did you not have anybody get pregnant like end of 9th grade?
Okay,
into
I had
sophomore
one
year?
friend get pregnant she was 16 though.
Oh, okay. Funny thing was, my family moved us from LA because we were having so many issues and so many different things. My parents really noticed. They're like, hey, you know what? I think we need to leave. And so for our family situation, from what we were in and the things that were going on, they moved us to Utah. But what was interesting is I think I found the exact same friends in Utah that I had in California.
Well, I think you do gravitate kind of what's comfortable.
To the same, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the issues didn't get a ton better for me, but I did have better friends. I did have better things, but whatever. So I lost my train of thought.
So you went on this golfing date with your dad.
Yes. Wow, I'm old. So
Senile moment.
we're out there. Oh, that was sad. That got to be sad. So we go out there. We're hitting a couple balls. What do your friends talk about? I'm like, I can't tell him it's sex. I'm like, sports? And he's like, really? Boys in a locker room? You talk about sports. Like, kind of. He's like, you don't talk about like girls and this and that. And so we got into it a teeny bit. And the next thing that I specifically remember him saying was, I mean, do you guys talk about the birds and the bees? Or do you know what that is? I'm like, birds and bees? Well, that is weird. Nope. Birds and bees. Nope, not for me. I don't know what that is. And
So did he give you the talk? Did
no,
you talk about like sex at all?
Not much. So what we did go over for the next little bit was what his slang terms were for certain things and what our slang terms were for certain things. And then it was a great talk. I to this day, I still remember that golf session more than any other. And we did it a lot, actually. But I specifically remember that and us going over the terms and what he called things and what my friends and I called things. And we went into a little bit, but I think he was planning to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so what we went over, it ended at a feel-good moment. We just kept golfing and chatting, but there was no like...
Follow-up? Was there a follow-up?
Not that I remember.
So I think that like we all have great intentions. And I think your dad did a great thing for having that first kind of conversation to open the doors. And maybe like even talking about what he talked about at 8, you know, like trying to talk about women's bodies and how we want to keep them, you know, like special or whatever.
Well, but then look at our different experiences though. You had a basis. The first time sex was ever brought up to you was a person you trusted with good information. First time it was ever brought up to me was a magazine by somebody else's parent.
Which I think is
disgusting.
Very disgusting and unsafe, right? I mean, I don't know the stats on...
No. Other things happened there that I'm not getting into that were unsafe. And it's... What happened to me later is... My dad and I ended up going to these therapists because we I don't know, it just didn't mesh our relationship for a good, you know, throughout the teenage years. And I think, honestly, what I was doing was the things that happened to me as a kid from this other friend's dad and mom and that situation, I think I held against him.
That's interesting.
And so we went to... My goodness, years and years. And I specifically remember 3 different therapists that we went to often.
And you know, this actually brings up a good point. We're going to actually go in and dive into therapy in another episode. So make sure you guys are subscribed because
because I have
some
experiences.
Strong feelings where there are really powerful things that happen in therapy. And that can be horrible and traumatic. And it can be go really wrong, especially if you are with a wrong therapist versus a good therapist, right? So anyways, we'll get into that another time. But that is very interesting. And I think that I read a stat long ago when we were first married or even as a teenager that there's 3 things that psychologically can change your brain and how you process things or things that have happened. And maybe that is basically related to trauma. But one of those things is seeing your mother give birth. Very traumatic experience.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we all did, but...
Having someone die in front of you, again, another very traumatic experience. And the third one is looking at pornography. Now, I know that there's a lot of stats, which we will share a little bit later, but how pornography can completely change the brain. And especially at a young age, it can affect the brain in harmful ways that are not just for sex-related things, but your perception, your relationships, and so forth. So I think what we're getting to on this first subject of how to talk to your kids about sex is, number one, it is so important for you as a parent, to be the first informative person that your children gets information from.
Absolutely. I think, and that's why we agree. And so we have videos with each of our kids at 8 years old. We would take them to a restaurant and we would ask them certain questions and see where they were at and if they were ready or needed. And then we'd have the full-blown talk. And Rach, the way that she would bring it up was incredible. I am so blunt now. I am so unapologetic. I'm like, penis.
Well,
right? I'm like,
okay, well.
I'm not using nicknames. I'm not using it. But like, literally, I would go super intense right out the gate, a little bit of shock and awe. And
But that wasn't the first time. The very
but
first time that
hers
we
are
did it,
so great with the kids.
the very first time that we had the talk, how to talk to your kids about sex, we took Clay, our oldest,
To get
on a
Dippin'
date.
Dots. Do you remember that?
No, not Dippin' Dots. It was IHOP. We went to the mall.
Dippin' Dots was the second talk.
Yeah, that was
We'll
a
get
little bit
into that
different
later.
one. But I read a book called How to Talk to Your Kids About Sex. Jason and I discussed it, and we learned all about
The
how
authors are the Eyres,
Yep.
EYRE, if you want to look them up.
great couple, lots of kids, and they fully support open communication, and they give lots of good pointers, and they say things in a way that was just a lot better put than many other books. I've seen books with cartoon like images. I've seen books with different things and the special hug, certain things like that I think honestly are doing harm to your children because you're not using the right, correct verbiage. You're not giving it to them very plain and factual, because sex is a wonderful, beautiful thing. And
It's so freaking taboo. And
It is.
everybody came from it. And
And
they
I-
don't want to talk about it. It's so weird to me. I'm sorry.
Well, you
Like-
get like the extreme. You get people that are talking like dirty about it or saying like, things that like children should not hear. And then you get people that don't say anything about it, right? So there is a good balance. And this book, I highly suggest it. It's a great book, but it literally lays it out. First, you obviously do some investigative work, find out what your child knows.
Well, we asked, so Clay was ready.
Mm-hmm.
Clay was ready for it, and we had a wonderful talk with her. If you want to look it up, a lot of these are on YouTube.
I don't think Clay's is because
yeah,
that was
Clay's
long
was
before
way
that.
pre.
But we went on a special date. We asked her some questions
Yep.
that we kind of just figured out, like, what do you know about sex, or how, do you know anything about babies and how babies are made? And
And then you always do the same thing. You go, Clay, do you know your body is a gift? Your body is wonderful. And you started out about your body and all these things, and then what the purpose of the body is, and why you have these things, and why you need to take care of it, and why you need to be good to it. And then talking about don't let other people touch it. Don't let other people do things. And it's very, very wonderful. But what was interesting was I took Shay on a date, and I was about to have the talk with him. And that kid was so innocent. He didn't even know what like his friends didn't talk about anything, nothing. I remember asking him a question. He was like, what? And I was like, oh,
he's not ready.
yeah, we'll wait 6 months. And then we went out on a date with him, and it was just a date. And we asked him, he was like, well, my friends kind of talk about this and this. We're like, okay, here we go. And showtime.
That's right. And I think that that is the best way. If you are talking with your kids, going out on dates with them one-on-one, which is kind of hard to do, but you got to make that time. Then you can figure out if they are ready for that.
Yeah.
And the information needs to just be factual. And we present it in a way that obviously wraps around our beliefs. We believe that you should be married first before you have sex. We believe that it should be an intentional, like in this marriage, and that sex is something that should be talked about in your relationship, to making sure that, both partners feel comfortable over whatever's happening.
I mean, honestly, it's the power of God.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to bring life. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be sacred, but not taboo. Once it goes to the level of being taboo, you get back to what you were saying, whereas either you don't want to talk about it at all, or you're so nervous about it that you make fun of it and you're kind of awkward and weird about it, or you're dirty. And so I love what you've done and what we've been able to do, because I am more blunt and shock and awe, and you are much more nurturing. And so each of our kids has totally had a different talk. But what we have done that nobody else has really told us to do is we have updates. At 10, we're going to do it again. And this time it's going to add much more into the pornography and assault and all of those things. And then at 12 again, and then at 14. And by the time they're 14, it becomes a pretty normal conversation in our house that I can say words and it doesn't get as snickered at. But we have had a parent, I don't know if I'm sure you know, but I forget who it was. But one of our friends is like, hey, I mean, you guys talk about this a lot. And I don't think that's da 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 da. And I was like, No, it needs to be talked about. No, I think kids just need to learn naturally. I forget who this was.
Um,
and I was like, yeah, no.
So if you are not the one instigating any of these conversations, whether it's sex, pornography, even drugs, alcohol, grades, stress, anxiety, mental health, any of these things, if you are not the one addressing it first and bringing it up and or even if you are not first and you find out that they have found out information that might be incorrect, if you're not there to help correct it, then we're not doing our job as parents. Like, I fully believe as a parent, we are here to help guide our children, not just stick them in a box to be really strict and make sure that they stay safe for 18 years and then you let them out in the world. No, we're here to help guide
They got
them
out in the world at 8 years old.
through all of these things that we've learned and through all of our experiences.
Whereas
What?
they have something we don't have. They have the entire world right here trying like a disease, like one of those viruses, one of those
Oh my goodness.
aliens that comes and takes over the
No,
planet.
it's like Venom.
They're literally trying to crawl out of this phone and infect your child or infect your spouse or infect your niece or nephew. And so if we aren't the first ones to give them the information, it's going to come from some tilted, evil, nasty source or just not a trusted source giving it the way you'd like it to. And so that's where for us, whenever schools are like, oh, the sex ed talk and this and this and that, and I'm like, man, we covered that so many years ago.
Well, and I fully believe, though, that like if you are having these conversations earlier on, by the time that the school wants to introduce this, then it could be okay that your kids are going to that. But if your kids are attending this sex ed course in middle school or high school, I pray for your children, because if this is their first source or even the only source of information they're getting, it might be somewhat factual and have basics there, but they're watching it with their peers. They're getting Snickers. It's going to become a taboo conversation.
If they're putting a condom on a banana in their school classroom and you haven't had this chat with them before, that it just sets up so many different connections in their brain that, man, you could have really owned it a lot better than that. And just because for me, I had so many experiences with it before I chatted with my parents that I'm sure I'm still not over quite a few of those.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, I have some crazy fears. Like pornography scares the life out of me because it was rampant in my life before I knew it was bad.
And I'm going to say that it probably is rampant in so many lives. I've got some stats that I'm going to share in just a second because...
Well, here, you look at that. But right now, I think there's this Parents Against Pornography. Anyways, a bunch of sites gave the same stats. I tried to find where they were, but 70% of 8 to 18-year-olds have seen porn on accident. But starts at 8 years old. 8 years old is when they start, and the number gets really high at 8, have seen it on accident. And then 31% actually lied on the website. And
lied about their age.
Lied about their age.
So you have to be obviously
so that they
a certain
can
age to access
the website.
So 31% lied about their age to access porn. So they were intentionally going in that direction.
And 90% 8 to 18-year-olds have seen it. So if you haven't talked to your kids about it, you have to, because this episode, we want to talk about how to talk to your kids about sex. But if they've seen porn before you've talked to them about sex, that's what they think sex is. Abusive, nasty, or exhibitionist, or whatever it is. I mean, there's, you name the flavor, it's out there.
So
that's what they think is normal.
So I'm here on Fight the New Drug, and we are actually like big fans of Fight the New Drug because the new drug is pornography.
Absolutely.
And we totally feel that it can ruin your life. It can ruin marriages. It can ruin so many things. We have so many friends, married couples that that are our age and younger, older, whatever, that have gotten divorces because of pornography or have had to go through.
Or pornography was the
years.
straw that broke their marriages back.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not that it was just that, but it was how they dealt with it. It was how the addicted spouse dealt with it, or how the other spouse dealt with their addiction.
Or it led to abuse.
Yeah.
So many things. Anyways, here's some of these stats. 53% of boys and 39% of girls believe that pornography is a realistic depiction of sex. So if this doesn't give you the motivation to talk to your kids about sex and pornography, it should. because nothing in pornography is real.
No.
Nothing in pornography is real. And the depiction that they are giving, and even soft porn. So I personally have not watched pornography or anything like that, but there are tons of soft porn in regular movies, right? Regular PG-13
scroll
movies.
Instagram,
all of it.
Actually, Shay was watching The Notebook.
Oh my gosh,
And
The Notebook. Huge,
It's a PG-13
sexy.
show, but actually, like, there's full breasts
Yeah.
in that show. So it's definitely...
Hollywood's depiction.
Hollywood's not protecting you from it.
No, Hollywood's like interpretation of sex, whether it is not actually showing sexual intercourse, is all wrong. Like the love, the interactions, how people are kissing. We
It's
all
lust.
think it
They
is
show
all lust,
lust.
and it is all different than what it should be like, right? So this whole statistic of that pornography is a realistic depiction of sex, that is going to just set up our kids for failure in their relationships coming in the future, right? Their marriage and their adult relationships. And that is where it needs to be addressed. Because I know even in our relationship, sometimes anything that you might see in movies or anything like that, you think that that's what love and kissing and making out
Well,
and
that
sex
gets
is
you the
supposed to look
dopamine
like.
hits. And so
Yeah.
you're like, that's what I want. I want to be thrown up against a wall, have my shirt ripped off. Then we jump over to the bed and we roll around. And then there's noises. And all of a sudden it's morning and the sun rises and we're eating cereal.
And that is wrong. Like sex is not like that. Your marriage should not, I mean, and like, I don't know, to each their own, once in a while, whatever is up for you guys. But like, really, when you're going to have a normal, we're going to kiss, we're going to make out, we're going to have sex, and it doesn't look anything like what it does on the movies, then you're going to think that your relationship has problems.
Yeah, you're not. I need to be very careful with my words here. Your relationship isn't as deep as what they have. Yours isn't as meaningful, and it's not as, here's the phrase. Our relationship is missing that passion. You mean lust. Instead of love, adoration, all of those things, it's just missing lust, which
is
isn't that
not
one of the seven.
It's not real.
7 deadly sins.
It is.
Lust is one of them.
Lust is one of the 7 deadly sins.
So-
And that's not real, right? So in a relationship, obviously, however you work with your partner, you are
Wait,
showing.
we're going into that subject. We need to go back to talking to kids because that is the number one thing our friends ask us is about sex and relationships.
But that's what I'm saying is like in your relationship, how we interact, we are showcasing what a relationship should look like for our kids as they grow up.
Hopefully.
As a,
if we're doing it right,
and
because
we
a lot of
argue-
couples don't do it right.
And a lot of times we do all those things, but that is the idea, is that you're supposed to pattern for your kids what a relationship should look like. So that's why we have these talks with our kids at 8. We're supposed to set up that opportunity to have an open communication. Then later on, we follow up with different things. So we want to make sure that we're educating them. And when it comes to the pornography topic, we want to let them know how we feel about it, how dangerous it can be for a relationship, a marriage, and how these things are not realistic. Much like you see on social media, right? There's lifestyle porn as well, where things are just not real. And so even that, addressing that
Maybe
for our
explain
children,
that one, or I can explain that one real quick.
So I read an article a while ago. I saw this. This girl came and visited her friend, and her friend was a big social media influencer or something. And the girl was a writer. So she's like, come over, we want to talk. And she comes and she shows up, and this girl has this
This
perfect...
isn't the recent Ballerina Farm stuff. She's awesome. This one happened years before
This is literally
that.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
And she comes to visit this friend and interview her. And she is, the social media influencer is like a food blogger. And she comes out and her house is perfectly clean. And she's wearing her nice outfit. A nanny brings down her, 6-7-year-old daughter. And then...
And the cook had just finished cooking the meal.
a meal out, and then she's going to go take a picture, and then the friend's writing this article. And that is what lifestyle porn is.
Well, she said that it was, my daughter and I just made this beautiful meal.
Yeah.
But somebody cleaned the house. The nanny was with the daughter. The cook did the meal.
Somebody cooked it,
She
not
showed
them.
up to be an actor and to pretend it's all real so that all these other moms feel inadequate.
Yes. And so that is what essentially lifestyle porn is. Fake images or a fake depiction of something that then others are supposed to think are real. So exactly what porn is, that is fake, and it's not going to get you that deep relationship that you want. So as parents, we want to have these conversations to address what that looks like.
You know what's funny? When asked in this research, they asked parents, how many of you talk to your kids about sex? And 42% went, me, I do. I talk to my kids about sex. Well, then they interviewed the kids, and 27% of the kids are like,
We talked like once.
I think they talked to me like once. And so there's this misconception, I think, and that's for my dad's credit, is he had a good talk with me about it. I remember feeling good at the end of the golf session, and I was like, okay, we had a great talk. But then later on in life, I was like, yeah, I don't think I learned things at that point. Whereas for our kids, the every couple years and then nonstop, our kids after the 14, they have something in our house called the safety couch. And so the safety couch, what that is, it's a couch in our room, not close to our bed. It's a little offshoot thing. There's a couch there. And if the kids ask for the safety couch, total immunity.
That's right. So
No
if
blame,
someone comes
no
to us,
shame, no anger.
we can't be upset. We have to go in knowing that all things that they might say, no matter how bad it is or what we think might be bad, this is a safe place that they can express their feelings, their thoughts, their confessions.
And we are not allowed to use it against them later. That is the hardest part of the safety couch. But it is a major part about the safety couch. And every single one of our children has used it
at various times.
at least once, if not multiple times.
Yeah, if not, multiple times, honestly. And obviously more maybe for the older ones and less for the younger ones.
Yeah.
But the safety couch is how you keep this ongoing conversation. So we talked about first instigating that first talk. And then we talked about having repeated talks. So like Jace had his experience with his dad might have thought, great, we had a talk. We said a few things.
We had the early one, and then we had the golfing one. And he's like, okay, I got this covered.
So he thought he got it covered.
Yeah.
But now we know, even though we have had multiple talks with our kids, how many times do you have to be told something to actually remember and kind of take it in, right? It's got to be told many times.
77
and
times.
have good conversations, right? And so that's why the follow-up conversations are important, as well as more age appropriate. So you guys might think we've had a lot of people go, at 8, you're telling them all about this kind of sex and this kind of sex.
Absolutely.
We are talking about them, all the basics at 8. And then we build upon that at 9 and 10 and so forth, right? And we're bringing in those other topics like porn and all of that. So that by the time that we introduce the safety couch, or even later on,
They have something to talk about.
they have stuff that they can say, you know, hey, this happened. Like,
Well,
what if
Evie's-
your parents
wait.
instigated the safety couch? And you could have said
I
at
can't
8
even
years old,
imagine it.
Mom, I went over to so-and-so's house and his dad showed me a picture with a girl that had no clothes on, right? Like long ago,
That
you
would have
could
been
have,
incredible. That would have actually changed. That would have changed so many things. Well, what's interesting is the safety couch for us. One of our kids came up to us and was like, I need to talk to Mom alone on the safety couch. And this
that's
one went
right.
in there.
Could be one or the
both.
other or
Yeah.
both.
And what she thought was a major thing wasn't at all, but it gave you an incredible opportunity to go over that with her, to talk about it. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, this thing's amazing. I feel vindicated. I feel released. I feel free. She felt like she had repented for this thing, and she truly had, because she did feel bad about it, but it wasn't a major thing. And so for her now, how much easier is the next time going to be? And the next time, because we have had some major things
Shared on the
been
couch. Yeah.
talked about on the safety couch. And
And that's the whole point of it. Is
what else are you a parent for?
the whole communication is us setting up these opportunities so that they can come to us. Because heaven forbid in the future, date rape happens, abuse happens, or even more basic things like, I'm really anxious to go to school, or I have anxiety over this. Like, the idea is to have an opportunity or a place where they feel safe enough to share whatever they want. And then later on in life, like our oldest Clay, She doesn't even use the couch anymore. She doesn't say, Mom and Dad, I need to talk to you about the safety couch. And not like because she wants to tell us something that she did wrong or something that happened to her. She just likes to tell us now because we have talked more frequently with her than anyone else, but that something's happened in her life and she is worried, stressed, or whatever about it. She now comes to us all the time to discuss what's going on in her life.
Well, I remember we were sitting out in the hot tub and she came home from a date once and she came out on the back deck and we were chatting and she was like all antsy. I was like, all right, what do you want to talk about? She's like, so I totally kissed the guy, but here's this. And she gave us all the details.
It
and
was
we had
so
a great
cute.
chat.
It was so cute for her to come to us and tell us about her first kiss, tell us about this date. And
We didn't make fun of her. We didn't scold her. And then, but what we have done is we go, can we give you some pointers? Can we help you out? We want to help. We don't want it to just be this la la land. And since it wasn't on the safety couch, we were able to be like, hey, so here's what our thoughts are. Instigating that early can turn into this, can turn into that. Here's what you got to watch out for. She's like, yeah, totally. Okay. And so it's been really cool.
you make a good point. I want to kind of interject. You said even though it's on the safety couch, we secure that there's no judgment or say things that they share that we can say use against them later. We don't want to use anything that they've shared in as a weapon, right? Like, well, you did this, so now you're grounded.
You
right?
remember that one time?
Nothing like that. But on the safety couch, we do advice and we do give,
We've had 3.5, 4 hour safety couch sessions before.
we give our thoughts. First, we let them share and then we give our thoughts.
What has come from all this is our number 2 most talked about thing most asked thing that people want to talk with us about is talking to your kids about sex. Number 1 is between spouses. And you saw us almost veer into that 3 or 4 different times.
And if you guys want to hear that topic, comment down below. We want to know
there'll have to be
as
hundreds
relationships
and
if that's
hundreds
something
of
that
comments.
now we don't talk personally about us, obviously, but we do talk about how communication is key even in sex in our relationship. But that is again for another episode. So comment down below for that.
That'd
So-
have to be like a live or something so we could like talk and ask and answer and do all that. I don't
Well,
know.
comment if that's something
Because
that you
I'm
guys
blunt
feel like you can relate to or would like to talk about.
Because I'm blunt, and so that being on something recorded and just sitting on the internet forever, I'd much rather be alive that we delete.
It is kind
so
of
that
an
we can have a good
interesting-
chat. Because it's so. Some of our very, very, very good friends were not talked about this, and so when it was time for them to get married, sex was still wrong.
I like that you did karate chopping.
Don't touch me.
So-
my no square, right?
This is my no square.
Right? But did that
you're
not affect some of your
absolutely
friends?
right. I have so many examples of how that turned negative in relationship and took maybe years of therapy, communication, whatever to get to that point. And so that might even be another motivating factor for you as parents to have those communications with your children. Now, I got to say, we are not perfect. As we've had this like podcast, I'm going, oh, it's time to do a follow-up with Evie and Cora and whoever, because
I just had one with Shay.
that's good. So, and a lot of times we do like, the same sex parent talking to them. Sometimes it's both parents on those follow-up conversations.
Oh, sorry. When you said same-sex parent, I was like, what are you trying
As
to
in
say?
like same gender parent,
Got it.
right?
Yes.
So like me with the girls, Jace with the boys, having
Well,
those
because there's
conversations.
stuff that like periods and all that other stuff, I am not going to be a great help. I know what to buy and when to buy it. I'm very good at that. I've been trained since I was like 13.
Good job.
But the boys, there's some stuff that they don't want to ask you.
Well, and I totally agree. And that's why as a force together, we can do a lot of good in this relationship when we do focus on that communication, kind of addressing what's right for each kid
Yeah.
and navigating each year of their life. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to share one more point that I thought about us. So it might seem like you are one and done and good with this conversation, or maybe even at 8 and then 12 and then 16. But as each kid grows, they are going to hit an awkward stage where they may not want to talk to you if you're not having these conversations frequently.
Yeah.
And then they're going to hit a phase where they have friends and the friends are going to think it's weird that they talk to you, right? So again, still having conversations and just as often as you can, and it's comfortable in different topics, not just sex, drugs, alcohol, peer pressure.
Well, find out what they
puberty.
enjoy. Trucks, cars, makeup, skincare. Like, what are they getting into? And ask them questions about it, because that gets them talking. Wait. You like cars? Yeah. What kind of cars do you like? I don't know. Fast cars. So when I was younger, I had this opportunity to ride in this Ferrari, like that kind of fast. Wait, you did? Yeah. So what kind of cars? Like, here, pull up a site. Show me the cars you like. Right? Literally dig a little bit to find that common ground and reestablish that connection. Because that's all that has to be there. It's just trust. If you've broken that trust, which we do.
All the time.
We do.
We say stupid things, or
we have to reestablish
there's a consequence in the house that happens. And so it makes them grumpy towards you. They don't want to listen to you when you grounded them because they broke a rule, or they did this or did that, right? So you have to keep reestablishing the love factor, how much you love them and care about them, and that communication.
Hey, sweetie. So, gosh, I'm getting these zits. And I know you love skincare stuff. Is there something that could help? Look at this thing. It's so awkward, right? Like, give them that opening to help you. People love being needed, and your kids aren't used to being needed. And so if you can show them that they're needed, that reestablishes that connection so quickly. Sorry, this might be off subject, but
no, I totally agree. And I think you have some great points. And I definitely want to share more about some of these topics that we talked about. So comment down below what other topics in parenting, or maybe you guys are struggling with. And we probably need to go have another conversation with our kids and do another follow-up conversation, because it's just that time. It's just been a little while since we've had one of these conversations. So honestly, it's been fun hanging out with you guys. I hope that some of these points and things that we've done have helped you or will help you in the future.
And please give us pointers.
Yeah.
What has worked for you? Comment on our Facebook or YouTube. That's where you can comment back to us. Comment on either of these places and let us know. Or, gosh, I wish DMs worked better, but there's just so much junk in DMs. We just don't go there.
And if you are listening to this where you listen to podcasts, come and join us over on our YouTube podcast, Raising Ohana, so that we can interact with you there as well as on Instagram. So thanks for hanging out with us today. Go talk to your kids about sex.
And everything else.
Mahalo.